Hello.
How's everybody doing so far?
Pretty well. I'm doing okay. How are you?
I should be able to unmute their own mics.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, that's good. So just stay muted if you don't have anything to say, but when you want to say something, unmute your own self. And I guess first, I just want to make sure everybody's doing all right with the lockdown and such. Prime Minister, actually the whole session is on right now talking, so we'll have to catch up with that later. They were a little bit late getting started, so I was a little bit disappointed. I was hoping we'd have more information at this point, but we don't, so that's all right. We'll give it another second. See how everybody's doing. If anybody wants to give any quick updates about your mental and social health. It's been kind of a long weekend, all locked down. At least the sun was shining though, so that's good.
I'd like to share, Dr. Kreiner. This is Keitra Robinson.
Okay.
I'm doing pretty fine. I'm on the island. I'm in Andros. It's pretty cool, I guess. It's kind of like always a lockdown around here, so I guess it's a little different. But the beach is right out my back door. So when I feel like I'm about to go crazy, I just walk outside and go for walks. But however, the schoolwork thing kind of getting to me. But I just checked for one of my classes, and it's like this for English 300, and my professor, he didn't even change anything, and it's a lot of work. I feel as though it like forcing people to take some of these courses, and you don't want to do that, because when all of this is over, hopefully by the will of God, we don't want to have to do these classes over.
Right.
But come on, the Wi-Fi cut down. Everyone from UB isn't in Nassau. Some persons in houses where they can't concentrate. Some people, school is their safe place, and it's really a lot to think about mentally.
I don't disagree with you. I think we're learning a lot about this process. One of the things I learned this past week was that what we're doing right now is not necessarily online learning. What it is instead is emergency remote learning. And so, yeah, in the cases of an emergency like this, there's going to be a lot of bumps. So, and I know this doesn't help your situation or anybody's at this moment, but I have heard plenty of people saying the same kinds of things, that the workload is just crazy and the stress on top of it makes it even crazier, and the cramped quarters for some folks. So yeah, I feel you. I don't know what the answer is to that, but yeah, we're all kind of guinea pigs, I suppose, in this situation. I think, you know, one of the things that is going to happen, hopefully, is that this whole process, you're learning to be flexible, you're learning to think outside the box, you're learning to do all kinds of, you're seeing where your skills are on all kinds of areas that are going to be important to you as a teacher. And that whole notion of thinking outside the box and being flexible and going with the flow and being creative, add that to your resume, guys. Seriously, add that to your resume in terms of what skills you have. If you've been figure out how to work for you, that's a huge plus. If you're still working on it, just keep putting messages out there for folks, because everybody's struggling with the same thing. So don't feel like you're alone in this. Although I have to say, I wish I had the beach in my backyard. I think sometimes when you're going through tough times, it helps to know that other people are going through those tough times as well. Doesn't make it easier. It just knows, just have some support and some camaraderie in the craziness. Makes it a little bit more manageable. Anybody else?
Hey, Dr. K, I'm just trying to catch up because I came in at 11:05, sorry.
Okay, no worries. No worries. Also know that, you know, this little session that we're having right now is time limited. We still only have 40 minutes, but please, please, please put your questions out there to the WhatsApp group as well. So I'm trying to up on the WhatsApp group and answer questions as they come up. But you guys can answer each other's questions as well. So that's, you know, that's a source of it's a social network. I hate to use that term.
Have our exam been decided upon how they're going to give it? How we're going to have it?
What I know at this moment is that we are, for our class, the SPED 495, we will be having an online exam. What that looks like, as far as I know, and I've not been told otherwise from the exam office, but what I know at this point is that the way I'm going to do the exam, unless I get told otherwise, the way I'm going to do the exam is I'll put the multiple choice questions out there. I'll probably put some short answery, like a couple sentences, small paragraph answer on the exact same format that we use on Edmodo. So just like you've been doing the quizzes, that's how the final exam will go. So what that looks like, I believe we still have to stick to an exam schedule, and that's fine. But the way Edmodo works is I can put in Edmodo a number of minutes that you're required to complete the full exam.
Okay.
So it can still be a 3-hour exam, but it's going to be remote. It's going to be for you to do it on your own. And I honestly, I like this because I think especially for this particular class, you guys don't need to be experts in special education. You need to know where to go to find the information.
I think for all education classes, it should be that way, because education is like, the techniques of it is always changing, in that you'll have to adapt your learning style to accommodate some new learner.
True. I mean, there are some things about education that you need to know off the top to make those quick decisions as you're teaching. Plenty of the stuff, especially for our particular class, plenty of this kind of stuff is, it's a matter of finding out where you can go to get information or who you can go to get that extra information. So I don't have a problem with our exam being online like this. I don't have a problem with you using your notes in your book, but you're going to have to be savvy enough and familiar enough with your notes to be able to say, oh, I remember where I have that, and flip through your paper to find the answer. So it's not that you can't know anything, but you enough about it that you know where to go to find it. And the final exam will be time limited, but just like the Edmodo quizzes, you can go in whenever you are ready, and then you're limited to amount of time to complete the test. So it's not like you can spend 3 days for a couple questions. So it'll be, I have no problem with that. I think that will be fine.
Dr. K, do you know, well, I'm looking like on Edmodo at my grade, but then like, I want to know if we'll have to probably do our own calculations to see what our final grade is going to the exam will be.
Yes. You should be able to see on Edmodo percentages, your total percentage. What Edmodo does not do is say like the percentage for the quizzes, the percentage for presentations. I don't remember exactly how. I'd have to relook at the syllabus for the class, because a certain percent has to do with the classwork, a certain percent has to do with the final exam and that sort of thing. So it doesn't do the percentages like that. It just adds everything up all together and gives you a final. You'll get a decent idea of what's going in. You won't have an exact idea, if that makes sense. Somebody's listening to the Prime Minister.
Me, I am. That's me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Since we're time limited, let's go ahead and see, first of all, if anybody has questions about the learner factors assignment that's coming up due, I don't remember the due date off the top of my head.
Tomorrow morning at 1 a.m.
Okay. And you guys know that I'm flexible with the due dates. I just want you to not put it off to the last minute and then have your plate piled high with things that are due. So any questions specifically about the learner factors and how we should go about it?
Well, just to I guess say what I was saying earlier, it is writing about between 1 to 2 paragraphs explaining one student who may have a particular learning factor. We're describing the learner factor, right?
Right.
And that's it.
Right. You're only describing the learner. You're not talking yet about what you're going to do about it, how you're going to teach. And so, like I said earlier, the objective of this assignment is mainly to get you thinking more critically about students who are struggling. So instead of just saying the student is a slow learner, the student is a low flyer, the student is unmotivated, the student has bad parents, instead of just saying that, you're looking a little bit more critically at why this student is having a hard time, why this student is struggling with your lessons, your assignments. And then in the next section, we'll talk about what are we going to do about it? How am I going to take a particular lesson and make accommodations for that student's factors so that he or she can learn also. So for this section, for our purposes for class, since you're just learning how to do this, I expect you to get a little bit more detailed. As opposed to when you're actually writing lesson plans and you're out there teaching, you can be a little less detailed. You don't have to look at every single factor, but just the factors that affect that particular child. But for our purposes for this assignment, I want to see that you're thinking about, that you're being intentional about each factor for a struggling child. Okay, and what that will do for you is help you realize things that you may not have thought about before. If you have a child who is a slow writer, okay, they're not just a slow writer. We need to look at why are they a slow writer? You know, are they just spending so much cognitive time trying to come up with the exact words they want? Are they having problems seeing? Do they hate the content area? You know, those are the kind of things. Did they just fight with their mom on the way into school and all they can think about is that right now? Those are the kinds of things. They're not just a slow writer. There's always a reason why. Okay. And so if you look at those 4 factors, you can start to detect what are those reasons and then come up with some solutions or at least some alternatives for how to accommodate for those reasons. Any other questions about learner factors? Okay, if you have questions, again, I posted our lovely YouTube video of the last discussion on, I think I posted it in Edmodo. So you can go back and look at it. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll repost it some kind of way. So if there's no more questions about the learner factors or the learner factor assignment, then let's go ahead and move on to collaborating. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen with you. There we go. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay, so collaboration with families, professionals, and peers. Just like we talked about the other practices, the principles of making accommodations, this is our 5th one that we're talking about. And the strategies are listed there. I believe these strategies are listed out of the 2008 edition. All right, keep moving. So I think most of the stuff you guys have probably learned about in other classes. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper in terms of the cooperative practices. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one of these unless you guys have questions. Just shout it out. Not too loud because I'm a little stressed right now. So go easy on me. I think it's really important. It's really important to consider that when we're doing cooperative teaching, we're not just working as groups, but we're working in groups. And so it's not just a matter of putting a chunk of kids together and saying, go do group work. We got to be very intentional about how we group those kids. Moving on. The thing I wanted to point out here especially is this first term, interdependence. And I think everybody probably knows the difference between dependent and independent, right? Independent is when I can do things all by myself. Dependent is when I rely on somebody else to help me with something. Okay? So interdependence, if we think of it along a continuum, you have dependence on one side, you have independence on the other side, but right in the middle, you have interdependence. And interdependence means I can do things on my own, but I rely on other people to help along the way. So for example, if I need to change my oil in my car, I need to know independently, I know when my car needs an oil change. I know where I can go to get help. But I depend on someone else to actually do the oil change for me. Make some kind of sense? If I don't,
yes, it does.
I assume that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Okay, so what we're trying to accomplish in this cooperative group teaching is interdependence. We know that each kid in the group, or if we're working, if you're working with other students, or if you're working with other teachers, you know that certain people have expertise in certain areas. You don't necessarily need to have expertise in every area. You just need to know who to go to tap into their expertise. That's interdependence. It also kind of goes to the concept of self-determination. And we talked about that earlier in the semester. Self-determination has to do with knowing what I want, knowing what I need, and knowing how to go about getting it. I don't have to be totally independent on everything. I just need to know where to go to get that help. I have a toothache. I need to know where to go to get that help. I need to know that somebody's out there who can help me with the toothache. I think that's all I'm going to cover on this particular slide, because I think everything else pretty much is self-explanatory unless I hear otherwise. So moving on. The notion of ability grouping versus mixed ability grouping. And this comes straight out of the Mitchell book in terms of the research that goes behind the efficacy of ability grouping versus the efficacy of mixed ability grouping. And most of the time, just kind of a rule of thumb is ability grouping is going to be easier for the teacher, because now if I put all the low flyers together, it's easier for me to teach the low flyers. If I put all the high flyers together, it's easier for me to teach the high flyers. But the notion of ability grouping, when I put those kids together in groups like that, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's what we want to be very, very careful about in this whole notion of ability grouping. It's easier for us to do as teachers, but it's not the best strategy for the kids in all cases, okay? If I put kids in the low flyer group, they tend to stay in the low flyer group. If I put kids in the high flyer group, that's good for them. They're going to stay high flyers. It doesn't help the low flyers, okay? And we know that plenty of kids, they all learn on different rates. So some kids may have a difficult time at first. Think of your own self. There's times when you have been in classes before and you're like, oh, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And then all of a sudden the light comes on. You're like, oh, I get it now. Let's move me up, okay? But if I put somebody in just low ability grouping, they tend to stay in those low ability groups. And they don't have the confidence to move themselves out, okay? Now, that's a generalization because not everybody is like that. But generally speaking, that's the fact. So when we talk about cooperative learning, we probably want to move more towards the mixed ability grouping. Okay. Okay, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to keep moving. I feel like really crunched to get all this information in because we only have 40 minutes, but you guys are smart, so I know you got it. Okay, peer tutoring, we're going to talk about this a little bit, and this is important, okay? Peer tutoring is going to be important because it's not just peer tutoring, there's different approaches that we can use to do the peer tutoring. Let's go on to the different types of peer tutoring. Just plain old peer tutoring, when you have a kid in your class who's not getting the addition of multiple, the addition of, oh, I don't say, actions. Okay, one kid's just not getting it. So I might pair up a couple kids, one who's not getting it with one who is getting it, so they can sit there and work side by side. And it's not necessarily a matter of, okay, smart kids teach the dumb kids. We don't want to get to that in our thinking because that plays into that self-fulfilling prophecy again. We want to put them together as peers.
Okay, I can try again right now.
Just by the concept of peers, we're talking about people who are on equal footing, right? Who are on equal basis. So we make the assumption that they're on equal, even though we as a teacher know that one kid's not quite getting it, the other one is getting it. So we're going to put them up as peers so they can work side by side. Class-wide peer tutoring, there's all kinds of neat research articles out there and activities that you can use on class-wide peer tutoring, games that you can play and that sort of thing. The one that I really want to talk about is the cross-age peer tutoring. And I think we've talked about this before in class. The cross-age peer tutoring is where I take kids from different ages, just like what it says, they're cross-age. So maybe I have a kid, and I've actually done this in my 4th grade class. I think I've told you about my little girl, Denise, who was having such a hard time reading. 4th grade, could barely read, could barely even spell her own name. And so in order to get her caught up in the being able to read, she needs to have a better understanding of her alphabet and phonemes and phonetic awareness. And so what we did with Denise is I took her to, can't remember the teacher's name right now. Anyways, Mrs. Smith. We took her to Mrs. Smith's kindergarten class where they are just learning the alphabet and just learning the sounds. And we said, Denise, 4th grader, I want you to help teach these kindergartners their alphabet. And so many of you already know the research behind when I teach something, I learn it better. Think of how you're doing with teaching each of us about the different disability groups, okay? My guess is if I were to put a specific test out there on any one of the disability groups, the people who taught that, who gave that presentation, you're gonna do better than the rest of the class, my guess. Because you taught that, you know it to a deeper level. So just like that with the cross-age peer tutoring, I take my 4th grader, put her in the kindergarten, and as she's teaching the sounds and the phonetic awareness to the kindergartners, not only are they thinking like, oh, a 4th grader, we look up to her, we respect her so much, they're thinking, wow, I got a 4th grader in my class. They love that stuff. But now my 4th grader, in her quest to teach this to the kindergartners, she's learning it on a deeper level herself. That's cross-age peer tutoring. Just do the same thing in high school. You have somebody in advanced physics, put them down to the 9th graders just coming in learning basic physics. You tutor the 9th graders on these basic physics concepts, you're gonna learn them to a deeper understanding on your own self. Okay, so know the difference between class-wide peer tutoring and cross-age peer tutoring. Hint, 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 okay? When we talk about peer mentoring, we talk about that more so on a socially or behaviorally oriented realm. So think about when we talked about positive behavior instruction, PBIS, remember? And if we have a school-wide PBIS system going, I might take somebody who socially and behaviorally, they're doing a great job, and I pair them up with somebody who's struggling with those behaviors. And now they're mentoring each other. Well, hopefully the person who is good at the social and behavior skills is mentoring the one who's not so skilled, as opposed to the opposite way around, right? So peer mentoring, the peer tutoring, peer mentoring are two different things, because peer tutoring, the tutoring piece, we're talking more about academics. The peer mentoring, we're talking more about social and behavioral skills. Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to keep moving on. Maybe. I'm going to let you read the research behind it. Unless you have any questions about this. Anytime we can get kids more involved in the teaching process, whether it be academic or behavioral, then their skills are going to strengthen. Okay, the collaborative teaching. There's a couple different ways that we can do collaborative teaching as well. And so sometimes, let me see what the next, there, forms of collaboration. We have co-teaching where you might have 2 teachers teaching in the same grade. So for example, when I taught 4th grade, I co-taught with a fabulous, fabulous woman. She's still out there teaching, and she's still doing a fabulous job. Her name's Erin Roberts. Oh, I love this lady so much. She and I taught together. She was a general education teacher, and I was the special ed teacher. So we co-taught together. It was a special ed school, and her expertise was more of the curriculum. My expertise was more of the how to get kids who are struggling up to speed. So my part was more of the accommodations. Her part was more of the academics. Now, that's not a a black and white line. There were plenty of times where she took small groups and tutored, where I taught the whole class on math. So there was plenty of times that we overlapped our roles and responsibilities. But co-teaching is when I have two people in the same room, usually teaching together. I've also seen this in gen ed schools where maybe you have two fourth grade teachers beside each other, and one is really, really good at science and math. The other one's really, really good at English and social studies. And so we would switch teachers back and forth, or sometimes switch the students back and forth. The fourth graders would practice going to Mrs. Smith's class for science and math, and then her fourth graders would come to my class for English and social studies, okay? And sometimes we had the walls in between the class where we could open up the wall and do a joint lesson. That's another form of co-teaching. Consultation has to do with, probably the best example would be if I have a general ed fourth grade teacher and I'm the special ed teacher for the whole school, that fourth grade teacher would come to me to consult on how to get a kid online with some accommodations. Okay, we consult with the occupational therapist, with the special education teacher, with the speech therapist. Maybe I consult with the school psychologist on behavioral approaches in my classroom. Okay, so the consultant comes in, they give some ideas, and they go out. And then it's my job to continue on with what their advice was. Partnership with paraprofessionals. There's a whole bunch of different names for paraprofessionals, but those are basically like the teacher's aides or the teacher's assistants. And so as a teacher, this is one area that I think we don't do a very good job in educational total with helping teachers learn how to be supervisors and supervise the paraprofessionals. But that partnership is just that. It's a partnership. We're working together. It's not that the paraprofessional or the teacher's aide takes the low flyers to the back corner. We work together. We're still integrated into the whole classroom. And the same goes with specialists, and especially with parents. Okay, we've talked plenty about the important role of parents. Some of you have done your annotated bibliographies and your special reports on the importance of partnering with parents. Really super important to understand that parents are the experts on their kids. They may not know all the terms, they may not know all the strategies, but they are the experts on their kids, and the parents are the one who follow that kid for their entire academic career. So if I'm a fourth grade teacher, I better find out from that parent how that child did in kindergarten and first grade and second grade. And the parent is going to be the one who's going to be the expert on that information. Okay, lots of reasons why we should partner with the parents. I know that's way easier said than done. And there's plenty of parents who are just like, hey, I'm not the teacher. That's your job. And that happens. But it's still our responsibility to do the best we can to partner with the parents.
Dr. Kreiner, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I feel like a lot of parents are now agreeing with the teachers are saying during this process.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I've seen all kinds of interesting things there. This is such a weird time for us. And you know, the parents are starting to understand the frustration of the kids, but you know what? We've talked about this in class before too. Kids are different people depending on who they're around. So just like little Susie can go to class and have one set of behaviors, she goes home and has a different behavior. She goes to Auntie's house and has a different set of behaviors. She goes to Miss Kreiner's class and has a different set of behaviors. She goes to Miss Forbes' class and has kids are very chameleon-like. They're going to change depending on what we allow them to do. And so
I agree.
It's kind of fascinating when you look at it like that. It can be maddening, but you know, it is what it is. So we got to take that information and use it to our benefit.
Well, my son is over me. He wants me to drive to his school to see if it's open. So I guess I'm not doing pretty good job.
You've seen the meme that says, my child on a home instruction wants a different teacher next year.
Yep.
Yeah. But but again, like here we go. And I know we've had this conversation before too. Sometimes we expect parents to know what we know and they've not had the training. So I think for the most part, most people are doing the best they know how. And if they're not doing a good job, most of the time it's because they just don't know any different. Okay, I think this is all we're going to talk about at the moment. Oh, this is the part about parents. You know, parents know their kids. Parents need to know their rights and responsibilities. And with that, sometimes you get disgruntled parents who take you up on it. And it can get kind of ugly sometimes. But honestly, I feel like if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that's not going to be an issue. And if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, then they better hold us to task. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's it in a nutshell. What questions do you have?
Do you feel our students will be better off with, I think you call it co-teaching, that the better teachers who are better equipped to teach science and social studies teach those subjects, and the ones who are better at math and language teach those subjects?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you took me, okay, I feel like I do a decent job teaching you guys about special education. But if you put me into a nursing class and had me teach those students, I'd be like, oh, dang, that's craziness. But that's especially in our primary schools. You know, what we do in secondary, junior high and high school is we take teachers and we have them specialize in a content area, and that's what they teach. If I took a teacher and had them teach language arts, how do you think those kids are going to do? That's not their expertise area. And so when but we do that in the primary grades, which is kind of silly to me. So I know that for me personally, when I'm teaching, when I was teaching primary grades, I always collaborated with somebody who was smarter than me in whatever content that I was struggling with. I mean, I'm not going to be an expert in every topic. I know that's hard for some of you to hear. Just joking. But I like that approach. I think co-teaching has a lot of really, really, really good benefits. There are also some things that we need to take into consideration. I've also seen principals who start a school year off when co-teaching first started coming out, probably, gosh, I'm saying in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, at least for us. When co-teaching first came out, there were schools where the principal would start the first faculty meeting before school even started and say, okay, you're going to teach with you, you're going to teach with you. And he paired people up. And the teachers didn't get a choice in who they got to co-teach with. So if you put me in a class with some teacher that we've been fighting all last year, and now all of a sudden we're co-teaching, that's not going to be successful. So, and the research will tell you that if we're going to do co-teaching, we need to let teachers choose their co-teachers that they are going to co-teach with. Much, much more successful. Like a marriage.
What if the weakest link choose the stronger person and they will only like stand in the back?
Yeah, well, and sometimes you have that. I mean, sometimes you have just like on group projects that you guys are working on now for various classes. You have some people who take the bull by the horns and they run with the whole project, other people who stand in the back and they're more introverted. And so you have to take into a lot of consideration various personality types. It has a lot to do with leadership coming from the top down, how I approach it. If I'm the principal of a school, how I approach co-teaching is going to determine how it plays out in the school. And so if I have a teacher who's one of those that sits in the back, I need to do a good job as a leader in that school to find that teacher's strengths and capitalize on her strengths or his strengths. And that's easier said than done. I mean, it's easy to put this stuff in black and white in words, but to actually go out and practice it, it takes work. But if you do the work, it's almost always, always, always beneficial.
Dr. Kerner, I have a question.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So for the students who stay in home now, what do you think is the best way for the teachers to reach out